Hello friends, I welcome you all in this session. In this session we are going to talk about different types of projects which are available, and we will also try to see what is project life cycle. So let's get started. Though in previous session we did discuss little bit about different types of projects, I will recall some of the types of projects and then we will further go in details. So as I said, you can have personal projects, you can have national projects, international projects, local projects, you can have industrial and non-industrial projects. Projects can be on the basis of partnership, whether it's a joint project or it's a single project. So you can have different types of project on the basis of partnership. So you can have a private limited company type of projects, you can have, let's say, some other type of projects. You can also have national and international type of projects. So let's say this is an example of CERN project, which is a very much type of international project and quite a technical project. So you can have project classification on the basis of high tech and low tech also. Let us look at how to classify projects based on duration. So you can have long term project, you can have medium term project, and you can have short term project. Based on investment, you can have high investment project, medium investment and low investment project. So these are different limits given for the projects. For example, if the investment is, let's say, 5 million, then it would be called a cottage industry or cottage industry project. And these limits of money investment depends on state government to state governments, departments to departments, and products to products. So as I told you in previous session also, that MSMEs in India have been classified on the basis of manufacturing enterprises and service enterprises. So if the total amount of investment in plant and machinery is, let's say, up to 25 lakh, then it would be termed as micro industry. If it is up to 10 crore, then it is medium. On the other hand, you got service enterprises. Here we look at the investment in equipment, not in land and building. So let's say if the investment is rupees 10 lakh, then it would be termed as micro service enterprise. If it is 5 crore, then it would be termed as medium service enterprise. You can also classify projects on the basis of ownership. So you can have government project, public project, a combination of these two, or you can have a cooperative project, proprietary project, partnership project, and so on. So who is holding how much ownership decides what kind of project it is. Projects can also be classified on the basis of risk. So you can have greenfield project, brownfield project, divestment project, and modernization process. We will see these projects in detail. So before going for greenfield project, let me tell you, in brownfield project you have got expansion, vertical integration, diversification, and in vertical integration you have got downward integration, upward. In diversification you have got concentric and conglomerate. So we will see these types of projects. So when you say greenfield project, what is the meaning of greenfield project? A greenfield project is a project when you start something new. When you go for a new startup, then that would be termed as a green project. For example, if tomorrow I start a new business, let's say if I am starting a coaching class, right? So that would be a greenfield project. But if I am adding some capacities to my existing business, then that would be termed as a brownfield project. So when you go for expansion of your existing business, they are called brownfield projects. Now when you say brownfield projects, you can have again different categories. Expansion project, so add capacity through market intensification or market development. So, let us say if you are already serving in Indian market, so you can go for foreign market, that would be an example of expansion project. Now, you can also have vertical integration. When you talk about brownfield projects, you can have expansion project, vertical integration, and you can also have and the third one is diversification. So, let us talk about what is vertical integration. Vertical integration means how closely you are associated with your upstreams and downstreams. So, the degree of association with your supply chain partners, and it can be in upward direction, it can be in downward direction. So, vertical integration, if you are interested in definition, then it is vertical integration projects are degree to which a firm owns its upstream suppliers and downstream customers. So, we will see what are the examples of vertical integration. So, vertical integration can be forward or it can be backward. Can you think of any example of forward and backward integration? Just for 2 seconds. Okay. So, forward integration is this. It is downward expansion is called forward integration. For example, if I am making, let us say, steel, and tomorrow I also start making chairs. So, that would be known as downward expansion. Let me give you another example. All of you would be knowing that ONGC is a Maharatna company. Now, ONGC is involved in oil extraction business. Now, what would be the forward integration for ONGC? Can you think of any business? Yes. So, suppose if tomorrow ONGC also starts selling petrol from retail outlets. So, that would be known as downward expansion or forward integration. Backward integration is just opposite to forward integration. So, in backward integration, it is upstream expansion is called backward integration. And for example, let us say if I am in the business of making steel chairs. So, nowadays I am buying steels from vendors. If I start producing my own steel, then that would be termed as backward integration. So, these two are very simple, forward and backward integration. Then you have got diversification project. Let us say if there are two businesses, one is having lots of cash but does not have technical expertise, the other business has got lots of technical expertise but does not have cash. So, both of these businesses can come together. So, that is nothing but a kind of diversification project. Now, when you say diversification, diversification can be in similar areas or it can be in dissimilar areas. So, when it is in similar areas, it is called concentric diversification project. For example, let us say you have got cars being manufactured by Maruti. Now, what would be the concentric diversification project for Maruti? If let us say Maruti also starts making two wheelers. So, that would be a concentric diversification project. On the other hand, you have got conglomerative diversification project, when diversification takes place in unrelated areas. And if you look at these days, almost all big companies are going for unrelated areas kind of diversification, whether it is Tata, Birla, or Ambani, Adani, or you name any big businessman, he will have diversification in unrelated areas also. I will give you a very good example on this. You would have heard something called IFFCO company, it is Indian Farmers Fertilizer Corporation. So, IFFCO is in the business of fertilizer, but it has tied up with Japanese company called Tokyo. which is an insurance company. So, IFCO Tokyo, they are jointly doing insurance business in India. So, this is a very good example of two companies from different areas coming together to get market share. The another example could be, let us say you have got several companies, for example ICICI Prudential. Now, if you look at ICICI is a bank, it is a private sector bank in India, while Prudential is a life insurance company of USA. Now, both of these companies have come together and they are doing life insurance business in India. So, these two are very good examples of conglomerate diversification projects. Let us look at what is divestment project. Let us say if you are doing any business and if something goes wrong, then you might not want to continue. So, you would divest, you will disinvest, and the reason for divestment can be several. For example, you are getting loss in your business because of obsolescence. I will give you another a very good example. Nowadays, you are getting mobile phones every third month, a new mobile phone. Reason is because technology is changing very fast, very rapid changes are taking place in technological field. Then you may suffer a loss in your business because of intense competition. So, because of that you might want to divest from your business. Many times when you go for business, you do not get success. So, because of failure also you might want to not continue in that particular business. Let us say if you are doing a business and if you think that this is not a good business and you think that some other business should be done. So, you would like to concentrate on, let us say, one particular product or one particular market. So, you will try to come out of some of the markets. Then you have got better opportunity of investment. Many times what happens, whenever you go for any business, if you think that it is not doing well, then you might think that there are some other better opportunities available from where you can get more money. Then I think that would be, in fact that is known as one of the, that could be one of the reasons for divestment. So, the fourth type of project on the basis of risk is modernization oblique replacement. So, many times you go for new technology and that would come under the category of modernization, because whatever business you are doing, you might think that the new technologies have come into the market and you would like to move towards those technologies. So, when you take up a project like this, it would be termed as modernization project. So, with this we are done with the classification of projects, and we have classified projects on the basis of several criteria. Now, let us move on to the next point, which is project life cycle, PLC it is known as. So, project life cycle is similar to life cycle of a human being. In life of a human being you have got different phases. Similarly, in project also you have got different phases. So, what do you mean by project life cycle? You see what happens, at the end of the day you want to manage your project properly. So, for better management and better control, you divide your project into different phases, and when you combine all these phases together, that is known as project life cycle. And many organizations identify a specific set of life cycles for use on all of their projects. So, in simplest way, what is it, PLC? When you combine all the phases of a project, right, it becomes PLC. Now, project life cycles generally define, for example, what technical work to do in each phase, because let us say if you are going for construction of a building, then you would be doing several technical activities in construction of building. So, that particular activity can be termed as one particular phase. The other way of defining PLC is when the deliverables are to be generated in each phase and how each deliverable is to be reviewed. Now, whenever you go for a project, you will have several deliverables in different stages. For example, many times when you complete one particular phase, that itself can be a deliverable. I will give you an example. Let us say if you are constructing a road of 1000 kilometers. So, let us say the first deliverable is when you complete 100 kilometers. So, on that particular day you can have some celebrations. The other example could be, let us say if you have completed 50% of the project, or let us say if you have completed 500 kilometers of road construction, then that would also be a deliverable. Or let us say if in a project if you have reached a particular target profit, let us say if you have earned 1000 crore rupees profit, so that could also be a deliverable. So, it depends on project to project. Now, who is involved in each phase? You see what happens in a project. Project starts with conceptual of idea. Whenever you generate any idea, then your project starts, and then you have got planning phase, implementation phase, cleanup phase, and so on. So, in each of those phases, it is good to have teamwork in place. One of the examples is known as concurrent engineering. Now, when concurrent engineering means in a team you will have experts from different areas. Let us say if you are coming up with a new product and let us say it has got certain life cycle, then while designing a project itself you should have some life scientists in the team, and those life scientists would tell you how that project would affect the lives of the people once you dispose the project. So, earlier people used to design products for manufacturing. You should design a product in such a way that manufacturing is simple, but nowadays people are designing products for disposal. How to design a product for disposal. So, while designing phase itself you should take care of what problems it would cause to the lives of the people once you dispose that project. So, these are couple of project life cycles generally defined. Most of the project life cycles share a number of common characteristics. Let us say if you are doing a construction project and if you are doing let us say a high tech project. So, most of the times you will have some of the phases similar to each other, and most of the times those phases follow a sequence, and it is not necessary that they will follow a sequence. For example, if when you conceptualize an idea, you can also start planning of implementation of that idea, and during planning itself you can also start little bit of execution. So, it is most of the times these phases are sequential, but not necessarily. When you start a project, what happens? Initially the cost and staffing level are low in the project. Cost and staffing level go up during intermediate phase of the project, and they drop rapidly as the project move towards when the project moves towards conclusion phase of the project. So, broadly we can classify PLC into three phases. You have got let us say conceptual phase, you can call it initiation phase also, then you have got implementation phase, and you can have finishing phase. So, these are three broad phases of a project. Now, in each of these phases you can also have some sub phases. So, let us look at how project life cycle looks like. So, as I said, initially in each project you will have the cost and staffing level very low. Just see this one, this curve. When you move towards intermediate phase, which is also known as execution phase or implementation phase, so staffing and costs are high, while in case of final phase it is very, again it starts decreasing. So, this is basically cost and staffing level across project life cycle curve. Now, this is the slide which talks about level of efforts required in each project. So, what happens whenever you go for a project? Initially in conceptual phase you would be requiring very less efforts in terms of let us say people's involvement, funding requirements and so on. So, level of efforts very low in the beginning, then these efforts increase during implementation phase and they start decreasing in termination phase. Now, this curve is true in most of the projects, especially in construction projects, but it is not necessary that you would be having more efforts in implementation phase. Many times what happens in software and IT related projects, where you have got very few things to be changed in existing codes. So, that is why in those kind of projects you might not be having this much efforts into the project. So, this is quite an interesting slide. This is another slide which talks about different phases. So, you can have defining phase and planning phase. You can jointly put together these two phases and call it initial phase, right. So, we will say conceptual phase, defining phase or planning phase can be put in initial phase. Then you have got execution phase. This is known as implementation phase or intermediate phase, right. Just see this slide, intermediate phase. Then you have got closure. So, in all these phases you would be doing different things. For example, in defining, you are defining goals, right. What are the goals of the project, what are the specifications of the project, what are technical specifications of the project, tasks which are to be undertaken, and who would be responsible for fulfilling those tasks. So, you are doing all these things in defining. So, you are defining all these things. What after defining? You need to plan. You need to plan material, you need to plan human resources, you need to plan budget, you need to assess what are the possible risks which could be there in the project, then execute it, right. This is the most difficult step in a project, execution, because defining and planning can be on paper also, but execution has to be real. So, execution is really difficult, and that is why you need more and more efforts in this phase. And towards closure, you need to train your customer for which you have made that project, then transfer documents related to project to client, release resources, evaluate what project you have given to the customer, and you should also record what lessons you have learned during implementation of that particular project. This is another slide on project life cycle. You got conceptual phase, you have got development phase, you have got execution phase and transfer phase. So, in fact, if you look at literature available on project life cycle, people have defined PLCs in different phases. So, broadly you can say you got initial phase, intermediate phase and final phase or finishing phase. Let us look at representative software development life cycle. If you look at this slide carefully, it has got 4 quadrants. The first quadrant is this, where you have got identify requirements, then you have got second quadrant design, the third quadrant is construct and the fourth quadrant is evaluate. So, we will look at in detail these quadrants. So, first of all, for every software you need to identify what are the business requirements. For example, you need to design a software for banking industry or for insurance industry or for hospital industry or some other industry, right. So, identify business requirements, what are different systems in those particular industries or in those particular businesses. Identify subsystem requirements and at the end identify unit requirements. So, after identifying all these, you need to move on to second quadrant, which is design quadrant. So, first of all, design your product conceptually, then move towards logical design, physical design and finally final design, right. So, start from conceptual design, move towards final design. So, once you are done with this design phase, you can move on to third quadrant, which is construct. So, let us say you identify business requirement, you have gone for conceptual design, then you need to have proof of concept, because in previous phase you are done with conceptual design. So, look at the proof of concept, then first build, evaluate first build. Actually, there is you can't say that you need to go in these quadrants sequentially, you can do some of the activities parallelly also. So, let us say if you are going for first build, you can evaluate, right. Let us look at this quadrant once again. So, you are looking for proof of concept, first build, second build and final build, and after each of those builds you are moving towards evaluation quadrant, right. So, what you are doing in evaluation quadrant in this one? So, first of all you are analyzing risk, right, because in identification phase you have identified different business requirements and all those businesses have got different risks, right. So, you need to evaluate risks in the very beginning, right. Once you are done with risk analysis, go for evaluation of first build, right, which you did in this particular quadrant, right. So, evaluate it, you are going for second build, again evaluate it, final build, test it, right. So, in this way you can have life cycle for a particular project, and as I said, the project can be of whether it's for hospital or it's for, let us say, any service industry, or even if you are making product a software for even a manufacturing industry. This is another slide which is about stakeholders influence over time. So, on x axis you have got project time and y axis you have got what is the influence of different stakeholders on your project. Initially what happens when you come up with a new project, all the stakeholders will try to have more and more influence on that project. So, you have got this much influence, and in the beginning if there is if you want to do any change in the project, then the cost of that change would be very little, but when you make any changes during mid of the project, then cost of project would be this much, just see this, and towards completion of the project if you want to do any changes, then this would be the cost. So, whatever you want to change in your project, it should be done in the beginning itself. So, what we can conclude is that initially you have got more influence of all the stakeholders in the project. Now, before going for next session, let us recapture what we have done in this session. We have classified different projects on the basis of several criteria, and we have also seen what is project life cycle, how do we define project life cycle, and in this slide we have seen how different stakeholders play important role in the beginning, and it is always suggested that before starting a project, let all the stakeholders sit together and they should plan the project properly. If you can go through these slides, I hope that you would have learned something from this session, and with this let me complete my session. In the next session we will discuss about points like how to generate different ideas for project, what are different methods of project selection, and there are multiple methods of project selection. We will discuss those methods in next slide. In fact, those methods range from highly subjective to highly quantitative in nature. In fact, we will be discussing some of the multi-criteria decision making techniques also for project selection. So, with this let me end this particular session. Thank you very much.